We were lied to about so much during the COVID pandemic. There was 15 days to slow the spread, masks and standing 6 feet apart will stop a virus. The mRNA vaccine is safe and effective. But were we also lied to about what the virus was? Was the COVID pandemic caused by a virus, a wild virus, a virus that was tinkered with in the lab, or was it something else entirely? I have here Jim Haslam. He is an engineer, so he's really good at putting stuff together. He's a journalist. He's also an author, and I want to make sure to show everybody your fantastic book. I found out, Jim, about your amazing work while working on an article myself about the DARPA DEFUSE proposal and found that listening to your theory that we've been lied to about what COVID really was way more interesting than anything on Netflix. And I love your work because you're out there on the edge of what we know. You're sort of making the map more clear for us, revealing more map of what really happened during COVID. You're finding new information. You're citing primary sources, government documents, FOIA documents that forced me to have to consider the troubling possibility that they lied to us about what COVID really was. Was it a virus? Was it a natural one? Was it a man-made virus? So, Jim, I just want to ask you, what do you think COVID was?
I'm 100% certain it was a vaccine. I,
I love
I,
it. I love it. So what
I,
it was a vaccine. What do you mean by that?
not a human vaccine, an animal vaccine. So it was nasty. There's no doubt about that. But if we rethink this thing and look at it kind of objectively, I believe it's pretty obvious that it is. And once you get into the details, it becomes even more obvious. But just from the get go, obviously it was contagious, but it wasn't that lethal. It was a 99% survival rate. I mean,
Mm,
now we're at a 99.999% survival rate.
right.
So I'll grant people the due diligence that it was pretty lethal, fresh out of the box. The first year, it had a mortality to it. Even the second year, if you're old and elderly, it's unfortunate, but as it's moved along and evolved over time, it's become abundantly obvious this thing was designed to spread, but
Mm,
it wasn't designed to kill. And one of the notable features about it was the asymptomatic spread. That was this idea of immune evasion that set a few people down a bioweapon path of what it could be. CCP, PLA, military kind of operation. Nothing good comes from immune evasion. Why would anyone do that?
right.
And the document I always hung my hat on was not just DARPA Diffuse, which I think you mentioned. It was the guy that leaked DARPA Diffuse, this U.S. military Marine as a DARPA fellow in the DARPA building near the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., found the document in a top secret folder and leaked it. And then his own letter leaked this in early 2022. In the very top, he said it's a vaccine, and he said
Right.
it was a bat vaccine. And he said, because the fact that it had immune evasion was what led him down the path of what he said it to be. And that just completely 180 me. So ever since then, which is late 21, early 22, I basically have thought the exact same thing what he said and just basically finished what he started.
So let's get into what you're saying here. There's the sort of mainstream first thing that the mainstream establishment was saying was this is a virus that emerged from a wet lab in China. In other words, this is a natural virus that occurs in nature and it happened to just get out of hand. Somebody got infected in China and then it spread to the world. So, on that sort of first level mainstream theory, what we call COVID, the pathogen, was a natural virus. If you go down another level, you get sort of as deep as Fox News did and Wall Street Journal and the more conservative leaning mainstream news outlets, which was that no, no, this wasn't just a virus. This was a man-made virus created probably with, taxpayer funds through EcoHealth, funneled by Fauci. That's why he's all tangled in this. So, on this sort of second layer mainstream theory, what we call COVID was a virus, but it was created in a lab using gain of function techniques to make it spread better and be more infectious and more deadly. And it kind of got out on accident. If you go down again, it's that the government released it on purpose. But then I found, which is kind of where I was floating, but then when I came across your work, it's like you dug down into like the basement of this thing. And you're looking at these same documents too, DARPA Diffuse and the document you just cited. What you're saying is neither of those things. I think, correct me. What you're saying is that the virus was actually a self-spreading vaccine. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was designed to spread. Contagion was a feature, not a bug, until the animal vaccine jumped species. And the Wuhan Institute of Virology is the way I start off my book. So that's it. When you have something that floats through air upwards of like 60 feet and infects you in less than 15 minutes, it's been designed to spread by someone with a very high level of engineering. That is some aerosolization that no man has ever seen. I mean, measles isn't even that contagious, and it's been around since the dawn of time. And this thing emerged out of nowhere, late 2019, and just shut down the world in a matter of weeks. So I mean, it was designed to spread. I mean, it was designed with intent. This is where people kind of freak out on me. I mean, they're like, "Oh, really? I thought this was an accident." Well, maybe it got out on accident, but I mean, this thing was designed with intent to spread in the mammalian species that was the target. It wasn't us per se, but these guys are idiots in the grand scheme of things. They had no kill switch from what I can gather. They had no backup plan from what I can gather. It was an idiotic idea. So it was designed with intent. I do think it leaked on accident, obviously, but
Right.
but with intent. It was designed with intent to spread. It was a self-spreading animal vaccine. You would take a needle and you shove it into one animal and you inject it, just like the mRNA vaccine that a lot of people took. Except this one was designed to spread via aerosol through the nose, through the mouth, through your breath, to the next animal next to it, and then to the next animal, daisy chains and daisy chains. So
Wow.
when you're out there trying to vaccinate animals, you can't go out there and grab each one by its antlers and all that and basically jab each one. They go out there with blow dart guns and basically the jungles of Cambodia and Africa, and they'll go
Right.
dart each monkey. But the latest thing I come across is they want to do a self-spreading vaccine for monkeys against Ebola in Africa. So the idea was you just inject one monkey and it would go off into the bush and it would go breathe or have sex or do whatever with his partner, and it would spread to the next one and the next one and the next one. It just kept going and going and going. It was designed to spread. It was the latest and greatest technology, and it was all the rage in 2018. $40 million being dangled about by DARPA, this little nimble agency within the massive bureaucracy of the Pentagon. And they chose 5 teams, and 2 of those teams were Fauci's Rocky Mountain Lab in Montana. So that's why I
So
consider this is cooked up.
what was this is like way more interesting to me than Netflix, like hearing this kind of stuff. Uh, so do you think was it a virus pathogen and then they tinkered with it and that's essentially what we've all been hit with, or was it something else? Was it like an amalgam of a vaccine and a virus, or was it just a virus designed to act like a vaccine?
Virus designed to act like a vaccine. It's
Okay.
basically a live attenuated vaccine for people that are into vaccines. They usually aren't approved for humans anymore because they can attenuate or not reattenuate. It would basically cause a reversion, I guess is the term I was looking for, where it can revert back to virulence and it goes live and active and it turns back into a true live virus. So that's what kind of started out as a live attenuated vaccine for animals. And it is literally just that an attenuated, weakened virus that is turned into the vaccine. It is a dose of antibodies. What we call an infection is an inoculation. So it's when that was kind of the big thing that came about during COVID. If you've been infected, you had antibodies against this. Well, that was part of the design of it. So yes, it's just also think about like the mRNA vaccine with that infamous spike protein. The same guy that designed the virus that I call the vaccine, the same guy that did the mRNA vaccine, Ralph Barrick. I mean, it was the same technology. The spike protein, the whole thing was geared around it. This idea that you would use the spike protein to vaccinate both humans and animals.
So what about the virus made it something that you're calling it a vaccine? Is that because that was the intent in the diffuse documents from EcoHealth to the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency was to make a virus that acts like a vaccine?
Yes.
Or are you call or is it that you're putting that label on it on the
It's
virus
both.
itself?
It's in their documents in 2018. We are going to vaccinate Chinese bats. We as Ralph Barrick, I myself am going to lead this idea, this crazy idea to get this crazy amount of money to preempt the animal spillover event. So SARS from 2003, a couple of decades ago, came from a Hong Kong wet market, legitimate natural origin spillover event. MERS came from camels in the Middle East. Ebola comes from Africa and monkeys. All these three things have one thing in common. They overlay the U.S. military map abroad. There's 100,000 troops in Asia, Asia. There's about 20 or 30,000 in the Middle East. There's 10,000 in Africa. And so DARPA was basically using this as I call it an academic science fair experiment, but it was really a military project to preempt these spillover events to not allow, any disruption to military operations. So SARS in 2003 shut down the U.S. military bases along the Pacific Rim. So it was a big event over there. It wasn't quite a big event over here. So the idea was to go to the source, so where it came from, bats. Everything comes from bats. Rabies, Ebola, Marburg, SARS, MERS. All these little nasty pathogens come from bats. There's this distant mammalian species of ours. It's basically the source of most of these things, but not all of them. So the idea was to vaccinate the darn bat. And in order to do that, you have to kind of develop something on U.S. soil. And that was the plan in 2018. We were going to develop this vaccine in U.S. labs on U.S. soil. We're going to ship it off for testing to Wuhan. And so that's where I contend it got out. So, this is not a theory of mine. This is basically just an answer to a question. And to get into the weeds, why do the old world virus called SARS-CoV-2 loves New World lab animals? And so that's what really led me to the vaccine idea. Once COVID from Wuhan spilled into deer in America, I was like, well, there's a clue there. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I'll figure out what it is. And U.S. virologists used U.S. deer, American deer, to develop self-spreading vaccines.
This is wild. So I have
It's
like
wild.
I have a million you've obviously spent a lot of time thinking about this, and you're like a supercomputer when I ask you about stuff. Um, why do you think it is that the genetics in the mRNA vaccine developed by DARPA and Moderna way back in the earlier 2000s matches with the 1 in 3 trillion, according to that Frontiers in Virology paper from February 2022? Why do you think that it matches with a 1 in 3 trillion chance to the virus, the what we're calling the COVID virus that you're essentially calling a bat vaccine?
So the guy that wrote the DARPA grant, Ralph Barrick, in 2018 from the University of North Carolina, he is the U.S. government specialist on coronavirus. By the way, the U.S. government turned over early in the pandemic, and they asked him, "Is it engineered, Ralph?" And he said, "No, it's not," because he engineered it. And then his 2018 documents leaked by Major Murphy, who we referenced at the beginning, and in there was Ralph Barrick referencing a figure D, I believe it was. And figure D is essentially the mRNA team from Moderna. It's a 2017 paper that he took from this 2017 mRNA team working on the Moderna, vaccine, and he's referencing their work on the spike protein. And in there, he's basically going to reference the fear and cleavage site and all that. So he has piggybacked off the work of the Moderna team to create his own animal vaccine. He's just basically hodgepodging this whole idea together as he goes along. Essentially, he's a 70-year-old man. I guess it was 65 then. He's basically been doing this for his whole life. So he was kind of the king of virology. But he wanted a piece of the action, and it was a good way to do it. You just kind of steal the work from someone else, and you kind of put it into your own bid. They're working on a human vaccine. I'll turn this thing into an animal vaccine. So yes, to make a long story short, Ralph Barrick referenced the mRNA vaccine from 2017 in his 2018 bid document.
Does that? I know that your view is that this was released on accident, despite all the craziness that you understand about it. Um, is it at all possible to you that this was done on purpose? And don't you think that because the glove fits so perfectly on both the genetics in that earlier Moderna created spike protein that's supposed to go in the mRNA vaccine ends up matching that COVID pathogen, when you connect those dots, you're still not willing to say this thing was released intentionally?
No, because it leads back to the people that created it. So if they released it on purpose, then they're incriminating themselves. It just took us a while to figure out who did it. So that's my, I guess my cop out answer. Don't
That's a
get me
good point.
wrong. It looks bad. It looks terrible. I mean, they all are rolling in on me. They are just rolling in it. It is incredible how much money they are making on this thing on the side from their patents and all that stuff. And if it's not like, financial reward, it's notoriety, it's nominations to the National Academy of Science, it's publications in Nature magazine. Ralph Barrick's lab went from a measly 100 million to like 250 million during the pandemic. I mean, it almost tripled in size. It's just, don't get me wrong, it's there, it's strong, but it just took us a while to figure it out. I think they were laughing at us, though. I've said that a lot of times before. I keep saying it, that we couldn't figure it out. These little peons of us couldn't figure out that we were vaccinating them the entire time. So these are people that they make their living and their thoughts and their whole career around the idea of vaccinating stuff, and they just want to vaccinate every living organism on the planet. And in the process of just trying to, vaccinate some animals, they want to vaccinate all of us. And I bet you in the back of their mind, they're like, well, we'll give them a dose of their own medicine. There ain't no anti-vaxxers now with these self-spreading vaccines, are there? So no one can avoid the jab this way.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm right there with you on that. But
And
because it leaked in Wuhan, because I know who I assume is patient zero, by the way, a Western white woman, I can basically, say it was an accident with some confidence, because it did lead back to them, John. I mean, I think
right.
from my perspective, we got them. It just took a while. It did take a long time. A bunch of documents had to be leaked, but don't get me wrong. There's, don't attribute malice can be done, but attribute to stupidity, I think is the term. So that's
yeah. I watched, you've got a great interview with Dr. Peter McCullough, and you said just something that like just put a rock in my shoe, and that was that we've all been vaccinated. You said like I have a lot of gratitude that my life was such that I wasn't in a position where I was forced to take it, and a lot of people were, whether financially or they just didn't know enough about the situation or they didn't doubt the government enough. Um, but you said that we've all been vaccinated. So even if I haven't had the jab, I've essentially been vaccinated. What did you mean by that, that we've all been vaccinated?
We've all been inoculated, I think would be the term I would use to be precise. And it was unavoidable. It was a 100% infection rate, which is an inoculation rate. So, I mean, we got a dose of the medicine that was intended for this animal species. And we have antibodies inside of our system that protect us against SARS-like viruses now. So if we were to ever encounter a SARS-like virus from, Southeast Asia, our bodies would be vaccinated against it, essentially is what happened. And they showed this in the animal lab. They took SARS-CoV-2 and they jabbed it into a mouse, and then they challenged the mouse with some virus from the Southeast Asian bat caves, and it withstood it perfectly. So it was designed to prevent, a spillover in an animal from SARS-like viruses. And now we're the animals. We're basically their lab rats.
So it was designed with good intent. It was designed in order to inoculate you. It wasn't designed as a bioweapon per se to kill people, even though we have, the evidence of the 40,000 deaths linked to the COVID jab. We've got a million, 1.2, 1.3 million from the pathogen itself. But do you see where I'm going with that? Like,
No doubt. I mean, there's always going to be side effects to any vaccine, and there was to this one. That's essentially, just put it to you this way: the side effects of COVID from the get go, at the early stages, body inflammation, heart problems. It affected the obese more than so. Was the exact same side effects as the mRNA vaccine: inflammation, heart disease, obesity, and all this other stuff that came along with it. So the two symptoms, the two side effects, the two ill side effects of both what you see as the virus, SARS-CoV-2, and the mRNA vaccine are the same. Those symptoms
right.
are the exact same. And that's a sign that, either the same person created it or the same intent was behind it. So
So
don't get me
the
wrong. I mean, there's some icky stuff in this thing. I mean, I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want the jab or the virus. I mean, I don't want either one. There was no avoiding the virus. I mean, that thing, unless you were living on the moon, I think
right,
everyone got a dose of that thing.
right, absolutely. So the symptoms, any negative symptoms, and lots and lots of death from this thing were not necessarily built in. Those were accidents. It was intended to be an inoculation.
Yeah, when you're dealing with an animal vaccine, there is no, idea of being like, nice to you. I mean, it is just throw the whole virology toolbox at the whole damn thing and make sure it works, make sure it spreads, make sure it sticks, because you want to win the grant, you want to win the money. So you
Right.
throw everything at it at that point. I guess and an animal vaccine is only 2 to 5 year for approval, and a human vaccine was 20 year. So, I mean, this was always
Right.
the lead in, you go there and you develop your vaccines using the animal model. That was the way you started. And in the process of doing that, it turned into, a whole shish kebab of problems. So,
Do you think that the truth about what this thing was will ever come out? I know you're talking about it. You've written a great book about it, which we'll bring up here in a second. But do you think the truth will ever come out in any kind of mainstream way?
no, I don't think so. And that's a great question. I don't think so in any mainstream way. I think we'll all just have to maybe agree that, this thing leaked from the lab. And I think a lot of people will agree to that. And then the contention will be who created it and what was it. And I'll stick to my guns on that. And I think I find within our lifetime, ideally, the what I consider to be the smoking gun of smoking guns. It'll be an animal proposal inside the Rocky Mountain lab that says we're going to take Ralph Barrick's genome, and it'll have essentially the PCR sequence from it saying SARS-2. This is 2019 in a lab in Montana, and we're going to passage it through deer mice, mink, Egyptian fruit bats, Syrian hamsters. Those 5 animals that led me to Rocky Mountain Lab, and it's going to be an animal proposal for each one of those 5 using Ralph Barrick's genome. And we're going to passage it and turn it into a transmissible virus vaccine. And then there's going to be an email that we're going to ship it off to Wuhan for testing, where it's going to get out accidentally or whatever. And I believe that'll be found in time. There's a reason why they're fighting so hard. They is NIH. The latest one was UNC tonight. Basically, has gone to running to the North Carolina Attorney General to not to turn over the 2019 files. They will not give up their 2019 emails. They will not give up their 2019 files because they're cooking it up. And I believe when they do, hopefully we're still alive to read them, or at least I am. And I think we'll have what I consider to be proof. Everyone's going to have their own theory, even after that. I mean, kind of, people can confess to the crime, which is kind of what Ralph Barrick did in 2018. And people will still not believe it per se. But I think once you find the actual document in the lab, this is the good news behind this whole long-winded answer to you. If the Chinamen created it, which I say is biologically impossible, by the way, when I dive deeper into the details, we wouldn't be able to find the document. But because some U.S. scientists created it, I'm confident we will find the document.
So you bring up Rocky Mountain Lab a lot, and that kind of went over my head the first time I listened to you. But what you're saying, correct me here, but why you bring up Rocky Mountain so much, one of the reasons you do is because you don't believe not only the mainstream wet market story, but you also don't believe that the this creation was made in China. You do believe it was made with US dollars, but not in China. So that's kind of a misdirection. You believe it was made on US soil in Rocky Mountain Lab.
Yeah, every other lab leaker you'll ever talk to, read about, listen to on Twitter or wherever, Substack, is going to say Tony Fauci took some of your tax dollars and tossed it into the Pacific Ocean, and some Chinaman messed up. And there's that. It's done. It's over. And I'm saying that's biologically impossible for any Chinaman or any China animal to have created this thing, which I contend to be good news, because now we can look for the actual documents in these darn U.S. labs, these U.S. bio labs, which is where I contend it was created. And because of that, I think it's going to end up pretty well for us to try and, identify the culprit. And again, just to go over it, the reason I was led to Rocky Mountain Lab were these 5 transmission animals. So it's the American deer. When I say transmission, I want to be clear. COVID infects everything, and it produces antibodies in pretty much everything. Lions, tigers, kittens, dogs, all these animals you heard about in the news don't create onward transmission. So in other words, the virus infects them, but it doesn't keep going. It just stops. It just produces antibodies. That's a dead end. What I was looking for was onward transmission is what it's called in the literature. Basically, you get the daisy chain effect that we keep talking about, the self-spreading vaccine. And there's only 5 mammals outside of us humans. There's 5,000 mammals. We're one of them. And there's only 5 others that COVID officially transmits through. It's that American deer, the American deer mice, this tiny little rat, this abundant little North American species, the American mink. Remember the mink spillover event in the Netherlands and all that? Those
Right.
are found pretty much everywhere but China. That was the first clue something was going on. Something called a Syrian hamster. That's the little toy you had as a kid, or your kids have as kids. It's this little little thing that hangs out in an aquarium for a few months and dies. That's basically a Syrian hamster. That's another lab animal. It's not found in Wuhan, but found in Rocky Mountain Lab. And then the fifth one is this thing called the Egyptian fruit bat. It's basically a lab rat for U.S. virologists, bat immunologists, where they can keep these bats in a lab. This is the latest thing. Monkeys are expensive, John, but bats are cheap. Monkeys are like 5,000. Bats are 1,000. Monkeys take up a lot of space. Bats don't, and they do really well in labs. And this was the latest and greatest thing they were doing in these labs, experimenting with live bats. These mammals, they're not birds, they're mammals. And so that was the really risky research involved in this thing. So those 5 mammals are only found in Tony Fauci has a biodefense lab in Montana, which is crazy. Think Fort Detrick, but it's got Fauci's name on it, and it's in Montana. He flew out there every year for the past 20 years. It was his outpost. It was his baby. I mean, he was there on, at least once a year. The 1-year anniversary of 9/11, all the way up until October 2019, a very weird time, through 2022, right before he retired, he went out there. And his aerosol specialist, his mad scientist, Vincent Munster, who I claim to be the creator of COVID-19, is in that Montana biolab. This Dutchman, he's not American, he's Dutch. He is what I say, the guy that created the virus as we know it, the one who aerosolized the agent and passaged it through these 5 mammals I just talked about. It's almost like the virus was the whistleblower. Once it got out of the box, it basically self-disseminated around the globe looking for the return address of where it came from, and it found a match. It found a match in Montana lab animals.
So aerosolization, you know which route I go with that. In my article, I go a little crazy there. I feel like I kind of back it up, but why aerosolization is important, very important on my theory, because I think that the DARPA DEFUSE document shows that that there was definitely talk of a target of a human population. That's a direct quote. And it involved aerosolization of these COVID substances. It makes sense why, on my theory, that they could have been releasing this stuff on us, why they would need aerosolization. But why do they need aerosolization on your theory? Is that because that's what happened in a lab, was they were infecting bats, and then the sprayer accidentally sprayed on someone, and then that's how it spread?
There's no mechanical equipment in my scenario. It is literally a vaccine in a needle that you shove into the animal, and you inject it. And now the animal's infected or inoculated. And now the animal's going to breathe. It's going to breathe aerosols. It's going to emit, its breath through bad bat breath, through bad animal breath. It's going to breathe on the next one. And then it's going to breathe on this little companion. It's going to breathe on this companion. It's going to breathe on this companion. That's the only way to get a transmissible vaccine to work. You have to aerosolize it. You have to make it airborne. You have to make contagion a feature. You can, this guy, there's not many people on the planet that can do this, by the way. I remember before DARPA DEFUSE leaked, I was looking at some guy near the North Korean border at some Chinese military outpost. There was none in Wuhan. And I mean, that was the only thing I was really interested in, was the aerosolization of this thing. And it's the only thing that I really cared about. It was who aerosolized the agent. Now, you could say that someone aerosolized it for a drone deployment. That's definitely a valid scenario, because that's also done in probably in Fort Detrick. Aerosols is a big U.S. biodefense thing. It is a huge thing. These aerosol guys are weird, to be honest. Who aerosolizes an agent? I mean, that's the first question, and why? And I try to take away the mean side of it and give them some sort of benevolent purpose of an animal vaccine. But the more aerosolized it is, the higher the R naught. The higher the R naught, the more it spreads. The higher it spreads, the more likely you are to get funding. So that's basically what it's up.
So forgive me. I want to understand the aerosolization aspect, where it comes in, because you're saying the initial creature was vaccinated with an actual needle, and then it spread something. Was it a spike protein that it spread? Was it more of so this is a spike. So you're saying a spike protein is being made in the body. Oh man. And then you're spreading spike protein that gets aerosolized.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, you are the You are the drone. You are the machine creating the aerosols. You are the patient zero, per se. That's what happened in that Wuhan lab. Danielle Anderson, was supposed to jab the bat, but I contend she jabbed her hand. And in the process of doing that, she turned herself into the animal. She turned herself into the first super spreader.
How do you think it? Like, what's actually happening? I get, like, okay, the cell's cranking out spike protein, and then the spike protein will travel through the body, and then it gets in like mucus and sweat, and it's like that. And then if you end up touching the spike protein, somehow its genetics will get into you, or
No, you're just strictly aerosol. If I breathe on you, just like the way COVID spreads, you remember the way those super spreader events came about in the first time? It was like Seattle. It was choir practice. They were all
right.
singing in that room, and that was the sign that this thing spread via aerosols, breath in the air. The way it just floated through the air. The way Vincent Munster does it is he aerosolizes the agent by the micron size. So the smaller the micron size, he's down there like 5 or something ridiculous. The smaller the microns that it emits, the animal, the human, or whoever he was targeting, the farther it can spread out there. So I mean, we're talking like something you can't even really see it unless it's in a microscope. But the smaller the micron size, the smaller the aerosolization of it, the more fine the powder you could say, the farther it could spread. So that was the idea.
So we're not exactly sure. Is that what you're saying? We're not exactly sure what like it looked like if you had to draw what is coming out of somebody that then it can shed onto somebody else and then
Shedding.
infect them. Would it be a lipid nanoparticle with spike protein mRNA instructions inside of it, or do we at this point we're not sure because we don't know the full story?
Well, the lipid nanoparticle is the mRNA. That's basically not what's called a spreading vaccine, just an actual one-on-one vaccine. So that's the delivery mechanism of that. Take away the mechanics of it, and just think about the spike protein as basically just sitting there in the middle of this genome that's 30,000 nucleotides long, and over here is the spike protein that's only about 10,000, not even that, 4,000 nucleotides. It's tiny compared to the whole thing. But just see the spike protein as basically just this writing on the back of this long genome called SARS-CoV-2. And yeah, the whole point of the SARS-CoV-2 virus is to deliver the spike protein to you, the animal, to the animal. And in the process of delivering it to every animal in the kingdom, every Chinese bat out there in the jungles of Cambodia and wherever else, Yunnan province, they infected the human population. So yes, it's I don't know how to put it other than the fact that they're very very similar, but take away the lipid nanoparticle and just think about the spike protein itself, and just think about the spike protein was delivered by a needle for the mRNA vaccine, but instead of it being delivered by a needle for the mRNA vaccine, it was delivered by aerosolization, by your bad breath in the vaccine called SARS-CoV-2.
So I probably misunderstood, and I think you had said this earlier that what they injected into the first creature or whatever, if she accidentally pricked herself, what went in was a virus, not mRNA technology. This was a virus. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's self-spreading vaccines are viruses designed, our vaccine is designed to look like viruses. I mean, you're trying to trick Mother Nature per se. It's a really weird term. But to go back to the dual use thing you brought up earlier, that's really what this is: dual use research and concern. I mean, you can use this thing as a bioweapon if you want very easily. Just
Right.
don't attenuate it, don't weaken it as much. They could have made this thing pretty darn lethal. They're turning Ebola into self-spreading vaccines basically. So that's basically taking some of the virus, weakening it slight a bit, then you engineer it, and then you give it back to the animal in some sort of contagious way, some sort of contagious mechanism, some sort of virus, what they call the vaccine vector. And they're doing it with like herpes. They do it with VSV. They do it with all kinds of other things. So this one was done with DNA per se. So the same guy that designed more or less the mRNA vaccine, Ralph Barrett, with his DNA platform, the same guy that created the SARS-2 genome. He more or less did both. That's why his patents overlap him, his technology overlaps him. Just think of the guy that kind of like caused both pandemics, both the vaccine pandemic and the virus pandemic.
Right. Well, Jim, I have like a million more questions. I'll have to bring you on and ask you just to put on your let's pretend cap and ask you, let's pretend like viruses don't exist. Let's say terrain theory's true and viruses don't exist, per se as the mainstream says they do. Then what if how would you apply your theory to that? Don't answer it now. Maybe I'll coerce you to come back on here with me soon, but I would like to direct everybody's attention to Jim's Twitter page, X page. Jim, you are, let me make this a little bigger here so people can see it. You are at JHAS5. That's at JAS5 on Twitter X. This is your great Substack account that everybody should definitely go on there and get a paid subscription because Jim is doing some work that you will not find anywhere else. Reverse engineering the origins of SARS-CoV-2. That's at jimhaslam.substack.com, jimhaslam.substack.com. And then finally, of course, I have to plug your fantastic book where you go in depth with all of this. They can get it on Amazon. I'm assuming some other places, but Amazon's always very convenient. And Jim's amazing book is called COVID-19 Mystery Solved. It leaked from a Wuhan lab, but it's not Chinese junk. Jim, thank you so much for coming on, sir.
Thanks for having me, John. This is cool. This is fun. Do it again.